NewsHour Direct with the one and only former Law Minister in the UPA government, Salman Khurshid. And joining me tonight on NewsHour Direct is former Law Minister and senior leader of the Congress Party, Mr. Salman Khurshid. Thank you for joining me, Mr. Salman Khurshid. And I want to ask you, you're a lawyer yourself, you've been the Law Minister, and you know that courts in this country have for many, many years asked the Parliament to make a law on a uniform civil code. What is the Congress Party's position on this?
Well, Congress has not said anything about what the courts have been saying from time to time. But I can explain that what the courts have said is certainly an important message from the highest at the level of judiciary. But these are not pronouncements. These are all obiter dicta. These are suggestions that the courts have made. The court will. It doesn't mean that if the matter comes back to the court to decide, then they will just simply say, oh, we are bound by what we said earlier, and therefore the Uniform Civil Code stands. The court will have to look at the consequences on fundamental rights of Article 44 and what exactly the UCC means. As far as my party is concerned, we've said two things, and I will clarify that. One, that the Law Commission, the previous Law Commission, 21st Law Commission, had examined this issue in great detail and had consulted a large number of people over a fairly long period and come to the conclusion that this is not advisable, that this is not necessary, etc., etc. Why should the 22nd Law Commission go into this afresh? We have not been told. Has there been some change of circumstances, some major event that causes a fresh look to revisit what has already been decided firmly by the Law Commission earlier? Then as far as the government is concerned, the government has been talking about UCC, but the government doesn't indicate what the UCC entails. So for us to have a position doesn't make sense. How do we take a position on something that we don't know? The UCC that the government has in mind may have some very sensible things which nobody will oppose. But the UCC could have things that go against the very idea of constitutional values, in which case you would have very vigorous opposition. So that's my party's position. Please, why hide something that you're proud of? Why don't you tell us what you intend to do, and you will have our response.
Well, Mr. Salman Khurshid, so let me ask you, you say the 21st Law Commission in 2018 said there is no need as of now for a UCC. I want to ask you, does that mean that time should stand still and 5 years later the matter cannot be revisited? Is there any legal impediment to revisiting the entire issue? So why is the objection?
No, not at all. Please don't. No, there's no objection. I didn't object. I just said we want to know why the issue is being revisited. Everybody does that. Even when the Supreme Court reviews its judgment, it gives reasons to say this is what has happened over the years, and that's why we want to review the judgment. Now, don't forget that the Supreme Court that once gave a judgment on habeas corpus during the emergency, many years later, 30 years later, the Supreme Court reversed it, and the judgment was given by Chief Justice Chandrachud. The judgment was reversed by a bench that had the present Chief Justice as a member, but not as a Chief Justice at that time. So reasons were given. In Puttuswamy, long paragraphs of reasons have been given why it was important to overrule the earlier habeas corpus judgment. So all we are saying is you must have some reasons, share the reasons with us, that's all. Who's objecting? We're only asking for reasons, that's all.
Well, Mr. Salman Khurshid, let me ask you, you're a congressman. Are you proud of the Shah Bano judgment and the way it was reversed through a parliament law that came in? Because
I'm sorry. This is fake news at its worst. The Shah Bano judgment had a response from Parliament, which you say reversed the Shah Bano judgment. But the law that was passed by Parliament was finally upheld by the Supreme Court, 5 judges saying, yes, this is what we wanted done. You're saying that the Shah Bano judgment was reversed. The Supreme Court says, yes, this is what we wanted done. Now, tell the whole story. Who's to be proud and who's not to be proud is a separate matter. But the matter is clear that today's law in the land, today's law of the land, upheld by the Supreme Court Constitution bench of 5 judges, approves what Indian Parliament had done. Now, you can't put intentions into Indian Parliament that the Supreme Court didn't notice.
Well, I'm a common citizen of this country, happen to be from the gender which seems to be at the receiving end of some of the personal laws that apply to women in various communities. And therefore, I ask without the legalese and say things as they're supposed to be and as they turn out to be in the understanding of the common man.
Fine.
How can you take objection to that?
Please. Wonderful. No, I'm not taking objections. I'm just saying that don't reduce yourself to the level of a common man who is not familiar with something that a person like you and I would know because we have access to information. Now, I ask you a simple question. What is the law? What is the law on maintenance today? You're saying that the law was reversed by Parliament. Well, what is the law on maintenance today? The law on maintenance is the law that has been upheld by the Supreme Court on the basis of the legislation passed by Parliament. The law is that if you do not get within your personal laws the relief that you should be given, then you can go to some other source, and that some other source can be general law. That's the law of the land. Now, in any case, there may well be a sense that the law is not fair to women. And if the law is not fair to women, let's examine the law. Look at triple talaq. Now, you say that triple talaq was unfair to women. The Supreme Court said there is no such thing as triple talaq in Islam. So what are you calling unfair even for ordinary people? If there is no triple talaq in Islam, then where does triple talaq become unfair to anybody? So the fact is,
so Mr. Salman
Khurshid,
if women have been dealt an unfair hand,
please listen.
No, if you're saying women have been dealt an unfair hand, let us examine it. 75th year of our independence, and we say,
yes,
let us begin to examine it really 75 years later when B.R. Ambedkar, the man, one minute, if I can just read out the author of the Constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and what he said.
Let's not talk irrelevant. Let's not, just a minute. I don't have to say what Dr. Ambedkar said at that time. There is a whole series of ideas that reflect on what Dr. Ambedkar had said and how he then qualified it. But it doesn't matter. Let's just take it that Dr. Ambedkar was fully on board with Article 44, as were other people who passed it. But when you talk about 75 years, it's an idle talk, because I could say 9 years have passed and suddenly this government has woken up to UCC 9 years later. It was in their manifesto 9 years ago. Why didn't they implement it in the first year they came to power? So let's not get into this business of this is election year, this is not an election year. I'm not interested in that. Let's go to the substance. Let's go to the substance. The substance is, and I acknowledge it, that 44 says, Article 44 says, there should be a uniform civil code in this country. What is uniformity in the civil code has not been clarified either by the Constituent Assembly or by the remarks of the Supreme Court. But if you and I understand what uniformity means, let us first ask the question, will that uniformity do away with fundamental rights? Is our understanding of the Constitution that whatever is in directive principles can override fundamental rights? Then there is one answer. If your answer is that if fundamental rights themselves are unfair, then you should overcome fundamental rights, but then Keshav Nand Bharti will have to be reversed. These are many issues. This is not a simple issue of saying, are you for Uniform Civil Code? Are you against Uniform Civil Code? So very clearly, let me just say, if women are disadvantaged, please hear this carefully. If women are disadvantaged anywhere in any religion, reform which is possible, reform which has been seen across the globe, that reform must be instituted here as well. Uniform Civil Code is not necessary, and therefore let us not go to a Uniform Civil Code. That would have to cover a much larger area. Reform, nobody is against reform. It can be done in a month's time.
Well, I want to ask you, today the Uttarakhand panel, which was appointed by the government to look into the draft UCC for the state, has held a press conference, and they have said that they will propose will uphold the secular fabric of the country, and their recommendation is that their Uniform Civil Code will do away with polygamy, polyandry, halala and iddat, equal inheritance for men and women, equal marriageable age for men and women, registration of all marriages, adoption to be allowed for all couples, linking marriage registration to welfare benefits. Tell me which of these proposals actually upsets anybody if it is not for the good of the society. Why is it being objected?
Why are you giving... Why does it have to be called Uniform Civil Code? Why don't they simply say we will have a reform of Marriage Registration Act? It's been done many times. It should be done again. Where's the problem? That you have to register your marriage to get benefits from government, just as you have to have an Aadhaar card to get benefits from government. Where's the problem? But why are you putting this in emotional terms of a Uniform Civil Code? What are the elements that they have talked about? What are the elements they have talked about? Those elements can either be taken care of through reform within religions, or they can be taken care of by reform or by amendments of existing law in the country. Where is the problem? Where does UCC come in? It's not their business. It's not their business in Uttarakhand to provide a UCC or change laws which can only be changed by the central government, that can only be changed by Parliament. If they don't know this, then they don't know the Indian Constitution. And if somebody doesn't know the Indian Constitution, it's not worth talking about them on a channel like this. Don't just isolate one community and say, if we take care of this community, we have solved everything in this country. No, you haven't solved. Please solve it in the way we have solved issues in the past, and it's possible to do it by reforming the law as it exists today and by reforming personal laws where the personal laws exist.
So let me ask you.
There is an examination necessary. There is a daughter or a son in Islam have the same rights that daughters and sons have in NHUF. Do they? But nobody's telling me that we'll do away with HUF. Don't worry. We'll do away with HUF.
Of course, HUF should be looked at. And when there is a Uniform Civil Code, HUF will need to be looked at.
No. Just I'm telling you, that list you just read out to me from Uttarakhand, does it mention HUF in that list?
Certainly
Why doesn't it mention HUF?
Okay.
You would have sounded reasonable and objective if you included HUF. I am saying that removing HUF is a difficult thing because it's part of the social structure of Hindu society. And that social structure of Hindu society cannot be disbanded just because we believe that we don't have this advantage and somebody else has this advantage of taxation.
Let's figure out how much time should we spend more in persuading. 75 years have gone by. Maybe we can wait for another 75 years at this rate, or we can get into the argument of don't look at criminal laws because they do not have anything to do with identity. Well, in Islam, they are defined, but we may choose to look at it one way or another. Of course, it is a huge debate, and this debate is going to occupy center stage in the weeks and months to come. But thank you very much, Mr. Salman Khurshid, for joining me on the NewsHour Tonight.